Yeah, it's not great when the FBI is telling you, hey, you probably should be using encrypted messaging apps when you're talking to your family because the entirety of the US telco grid may have been hacked by the Chinese. Now, this isn't actually new news. This hack happened back in October of this year, but we're starting to hear a little bit more about it now. The reason for this is senators are a little pissed off that almost 2 months later, telco providers still can't tell them if the Chinese are still in their networks. Now, how did this happen? How did we get here? The nature of the attack, the nature of how the Chinese got into these networks is not entirely known up until now, at least publicly. There may be classified things within the FBI where they know what's going on, but we as the public do not know. But what we do know is that they have been using the system created for the police to intercept criminal investigations, to listen to the calls of American citizens. This is actually a feature, not a bug, of the 3G spec. The 3G spec being like if your phone is a 4G phone or a 5G phone. Before that, we had 3G, the third generation of the telco spec. And within it was a lawful intercept spec that basically said, if your country supports lawful intercept of traffic, here is the infrastructure to do it. Now, this obviously is the inherent flaw with putting a backdoor anywhere. Like, the lawful intercept interface is literally a backdoor in the 3G architecture that will allow you to pick up data when and where you want it. And so if someone's able to get into your network, they're able to use this architecture to do their evil bidding. And so, the back door is there, supposedly for the security of, people, and so that the law enforcement agencies can do their thing. But then the minute someone else finds the back door, they also have the same authority. So is it really doing a net positive? That's kind of the question. And so when commercial entities build systems that can capture or access mass data, hackers and intelligence services will come for them. And that's exactly what happened. And so what happened is the Chinese were like, that seems like a pretty good target. I kind of want to get in there. And so they did. They hacked into 8 telco providers and now have access to that interface for basically the entire national grid. Now, the problem is that some sources say anonymously that this may have been going on for as long as 1 or 2 years ago, which is a crazy long time to not really know if somebody is slurping up data from your network like just for free. And also, maybe you're watching this video and you're not in the US. You're like, those friggin' Americans, they keep getting hacked by the Chinese. Okay, well, read this line. The number of countries impacted by this hack is currently believed to be in the low couple dozen. Yeah, just 12 or 48 or 72 or, one of those numbers. We are seeing a lot of reporting about the impact of the US because America #1, baby, back-to-back World War champs. But, we are not alone in this kind of attack. I would argue we are probably postured the most defensively, given how often this happens to us and how aware of it we are. But you are probably also effective. To make this less easy to do, CISA, which is the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, an organization within DHS, put out some pretty good guidance, I guess, to make your networks more hardened, like, use proper key exchanges, use these kinds of differential exchange, these public key algorithms, make sure you're using TLS 1.3. And you'll notice that this whole thing is a very long laundry list and kind of highlights, I think, the complexity of cybersecurity. Like, because there's so much stuff here, if one person misses one of these things and doesn't comply to rule number 496, they leave a potential backdoor or, a vulnerability that a threat actor could use to get into a network. What I do find really interesting about this is the traditional, I think, boomer knee-jerk reaction by senators, which basically they're saying, we vow for action because we have to do something and save face. And so there are senators who are talking about drafting legislation for this issue, but I just don't know if legislation will do anything. I don't know if writing a law will suddenly make the telco networks like more secure and prevent the Chinese government from hacking into the networks. Like, I don't know what amount of legislation can bring this in. The primary concern that is left behind, that leaves people kind of nervous and that leaves me nervous, is that we still don't know if the hackers have access to the telco networks. And I'm gonna say something really controversial that I think is unfortunate and expensive and that no one's gonna like. unless you literally burn down the entire network and build it from the ground up, you can never be sure that there's not hackers in there. Unless you are willing to literally inspect every piece of firmware, every line card in these gigantic switches that run these networks, inside every HR computer, inside every network that runs the Verizon.com front page. Like, unless you're literally able to check all of these things, I think there is no world where you can be completely sure that no one is in these networks. And that is the problem when you get an intrusion so deep where they're able to covertly use a lawful intercept architecture, is that they know the network better than you do. And they are probably hiding in nooks and crannies that you forgot existed. So yes, if you are a part of this, if you are affected by this, if you're running these networks, like, obviously use these techniques, use these rules to make your network more secure. But man, I just don't think we're ever gonna really know if they're out of there unless we like start replacing hardware from the ground up. And it's important to note too that like this isn't the only time this has happened. This isn't like the first instance of this going on. There was another intrusion set. So the telco thing happened by this intrusion set called Salt Typhoon. And when I say intrusion set, literally it just means a group of signatures and TTPs and SOPs that a group of hackers uses. And so Salt Typhoon is the one that's going after telco. There's another one entirely that's also Chinese state sponsored called Volt Typhoon, and they are going after things like the water grid, like the power grid. They're out here popping Soho routers, I think I saw. They're out here popping routers and making a botnet that they could potentially use in the future. And so the big speculation here, the big scary thing is that if they're pre-positioning in these networks, what are they waiting for? A lot of people are nervous that if there were ever to be a geopolitical tension or a military conflict with the US, this access they now have, they can use it to kind of, flip a switch and now, oops, the water is turned off. And so maybe we as the US have less responses that we can make. So I want to highlight that this isn't an isolated incident, right? We have not only the telco grids getting popped, but also, the power grid, the water grid, and a bunch of other just the grids TM getting kind of ripped open by these threat actors. I think one thing that triggers me about these intrusions is like, I think when people think of hacking, they're like, oh my God, like that threat actor had some 0-day and they threw the 0-day and they got into the grid and then the mainframe got, like, if you read this article, Volt Typhoon exploits unprotected, outdated edge devices within targeted critical infrastructure. According to Strike, Volt Typhoon's tactics are adaptive and multifaceted, but they exploit legacy weaknesses in Cisco RV320 and 325 routers and Netgear ProSafe routers. Like the power grid and the water grid would stop getting hacked if you lazy fucks would just upgrade your firmware, man. That's like, this is part of it that bothers me. It's like we're having this conversation about like, oh my God, like so advanced, like using the 3G lawful intercept interface to steal. Upgrade. Just upgrade, man. Like, this will stop so many of the bugs. Now, obviously, if they know that this is in your network, they're gonna take the firmware, they're gonna go look for 0-days, they're gonna try to get into your shit. But if they can just go to exploitdb.com and what the fuck? Exploit.db? But if they can just go to exploitdb and search for, RV320, la 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 la, and like whatever, imagine that it's there. Pretend with me for a second. If they can just do that, that is unacceptable. How are you allowing your network to be vulnerable to that? Like, turn on auto updates, turn on automatic restarts. Like, this, so simple, man. So what is the fallout for this? Well, for right now, the answer is continue to use encrypted applications. If you're gonna call your mom, tell her happy birthday, or to tell her to buy more Google stock, use a encrypted application like FaceTime or like Signal so that your calls cannot be intercepted via the telecommunication lawful intercept tab. Now, if you enjoyed this, or if you like hearing me yap, or just think I'm pretty, I do stream on Twitch, twitch.tv/lowleveltv. Come over and say hi. I love talking about this stuff with people. I love answering questions. If you have any, I would love to answer them. That's it for now, guys. I appreciate, thank you so much for watching, and go watch this next video about something even cooler, or scarier, I guess, in cybersecurity. Thank you. Goodbye.